The day my mother died, she whispered to me, "Keep this envelope safe. Open it only when you truly have nothing left to lose." 6 months later, as I stood in the rain watching my stepmother toss my belongings onto the front lawn, I remembered that envelope. Little did she know, her cruel smile would soon fade when she discovered who really owned the house she was so desperately trying to claim. If you've ever been betrayed by family, hit that subscribe button now and join our community of survival stories. I still remember the scent of lavender that clung to my mother's hospital room. She had adorned every surface with little purple sachets, insisting that clinical sterility would not be the backdrop to our final conversations. Even in death, she'd say with a weak smile, we choose how we live each moment. It was on a quiet Tuesday evening, with rain pattering gently against the window, that she called me to her bedside. Her hands, once strong enough to carry me through every hardship, now felt like tissue paper in mine. "Elena," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the steady beep of monitors. "In my drawer, there's a blue envelope. Take it." I found it easily, sealed with her favorite wax stamp, the one with the small bird in flight that had been her signature for as long as I could remember. "Don't open this yet," she instructed, her eyes suddenly sharp with a clarity that had been absent for weeks. "Keep it somewhere safe. You'll know when the time is right." I nodded, slipping it into my jacket pocket as she continued. "Your father," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "he means well, but grief changes people. He'll need time. And when he finds someone new, be kind if you can. But remember who you are. Never forget that you are my daughter, and there is steel in your spine, just as there was in mine." I promised her I would remember. 2 days later, she was gone. The funeral passed in a blur of black clothes and platitudes from people I barely knew. My father retreated into himself, working longer hours, coming home only to sit in silence with a glass of whiskey. Our spacious home, once warm with my mother's laughter, became a mausoleum of shared memories neither of us knew how to navigate. 3 months after we buried her, my father mentioned Sana for the first time. "She's a colleague," he explained over our silent dinner. "We've been having coffee after work. She's been helpful." I nodded, pushing my food around the plate. "That's good, Dad. Mom would want you to have support." His eyes flickered with something, relief perhaps, before returning to his meal. "I meant what I said. My mother would have wanted him to find comfort. What she wouldn't have wanted was what unfolded over the following months." Sana first entered our home on a Sunday afternoon, bearing a casserole and a sympathetic smile. She was beautiful, with sleek dark hair and perfectly manicured nails that clicked softly against our countertops as she moved through the kitchen with practiced ease. "Your father has told me so much about you, Elena," she said, her voice honeyed with warmth. "I know this must be so difficult, losing your mother at such a young age." At 26, I wasn't exactly a child, but I appreciated the sentiment. I wanted to like her, for my father's sake, for my own. I wanted to believe that maybe she could bring some light back into our shadowed home. For a few weeks, it seemed possible. Sana was attentive, bringing fresh flowers for the table, cooking elaborate meals, drawing my father into conversation in ways I had failed to do. She asked about my job at the local art gallery, seemed interested in my painting hobby, and even suggested we might go shopping together. Then the subtle shifts began. My mother's favorite vase disappeared from the mantel, replaced by a modern sculpture. The living room furniture was rearranged to improve the energy flow. The family photographs in the hallway were exchanged for abstract prints to help create new memories instead of dwelling on the past. When I questioned these changes, Sana's smile never wavered, but her eyes cooled. "Your father and I agreed it was time for some updates," she would say. "Don't you think your mother would want him to move forward with his life?" It was a masterful strategy, weaponizing my mother's memory against any objection. And my father, emerging from his fog of grief, seemed grateful for the transformation. For the first time since my mother's death, he was smiling again, laughing at Sana's witty remarks, holding her hand across the dinner table. Their wedding was a small affair, just 6 months after my mother's passing. I stood beside them in the courthouse, smiling for photographs and accepting congratulations from Sana's extensive circle of friends. My father looked happier than he had in months, and I tried to focus on that rather than the hollow ache in my chest. "We're going to be such great friends, Elena," Sana told me at the small reception, squeezing my arm. "Almost like sisters." 1 week after the wedding, she suggested I might be happier in my own apartment. You're a young woman, she said, stirring her tea. Don't you want your independence? Your own space to bring friends, or boyfriends? She laughed lightly. Plus, newlyweds need their privacy, you know. When I mentioned this to my father, he looked uncomfortable but nodded. Sana makes a good point, Elena. It might be healthier for you to have your own place. We could help with the deposit on an apartment. This is my home, I said quietly. Mom and I renovated the entire upstairs together. My studio is here. It's not like we're asking you to move across the country, he replied, an edge entering his voice. And Sana was thinking of converting your studio into a home office. She needs space to work from home sometimes. That night, I sat on my bed and held the blue envelope my mother had given me. I turned it over in my hands, feeling the weight of whatever lay inside. Not yet, I thought. There must still be a way to preserve what family I had left. For the next month, I tried. I rearranged my schedule to be home less often, giving them the newlywed privacy Sana had mentioned. I helped redecorate the dining room to her specifications. I smiled through her passive-aggressive comments about my clothes, my career choice, my lack of serious relationships. At your age, she remarked during one dinner, I was already managing my own department and had been engaged twice. Different priorities, I suppose. My father chuckled, squeezing her hand. Not everyone can be as driven as you, darling. The Elena from before my mother's death might have fired back a retort. The present Elena swallowed it with her wine. The breaking point came unexpectedly on a rainy afternoon, much like the day my mother had given me the envelope. I came home early from work, soaked through from a sudden downpour, to find Sana in my studio. She was methodically removing my canvases from the walls, stacking them carelessly in the corner. My easel had already been disassembled, and boxes of my paints and brushes sat haphazardly near the door. What are you doing? I asked, water still dripping from my coat onto the hardwood floor. She turned, not even startled by my presence. Oh, Elena. I didn't expect you until later. She gestured around the half-dismantled room. Since you're being so stubborn about finding your own place, I decided to move forward with the office conversion. Your father agreed it was time. You had no right, I said, my voice shaking. These are my things. This is my space. Sana's smile tightened. This is my house now, Elena. Your father and I are married. What's his is mine, and it's time for us to make this place our own. She picked up a small clay sculpture my mother had made in her ceramics class. So much of this is just clutter. Reminders of the past that are holding everyone back. I crossed the room and took the sculpture from her hands, cradling it against my chest. Don't touch my mother's things. Something flickered in Sana's eyes, a brief flash of the mask slipping, before she composed herself again. I understand this is difficult, but... No, you don't understand anything, I interrupted. You've been here for 5 minutes compared to the lifetime I spent in this house with my parents. You don't get to erase my mother. She straightened her designer blouse, her expression cooling. I think you should take some time to calm down. Perhaps stay with a friend tonight. When you return, we can discuss your timeline for moving out like reasonable adults. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. Not anymore, she said, all pretense of warmth vanishing from her voice. Your father has made his choice, Elena. He chose me. He chose a new beginning. If you can't respect that, then you're just an unwelcome reminder of his past. The front door opened and closed downstairs, followed by my father's voice calling out a greeting. Sana's smile returned instantly, though it didn't reach her eyes. We'll continue this discussion later, with your father present. Though I should warn you, he's already agreed that my office plans take priority. When my father saw us both standing tensely in the studio doorway, he sighed heavily. What's happening now? Before I could speak, Sana moved to his side, touching his arm gently. I was just trying to get started on the office conversion we discussed, and Elena became upset. I understand it's emotional, but we agreed this was for the best. My father looked at me, then at the dismantled studio behind me. Elena, we talked about this. Sana needs a proper workspace, and you're hardly ever here to use the studio anyway. Because she's made it impossible for me to feel welcome in my own home. I exclaimed. Dad, can't you see what's happening? Since the wedding, she's been systematically erasing Mom from this house, from our lives. His expression hardened. That's enough. Your mother is gone, Elena. We need to move forward. Sanar is my wife now, and this is her home too. So that gives her the right to throw away my things? To dismantle the studio Mom and I built together. Nothing's being thrown away, he said, though his eyes didn't meet mine. Your things are just being relocated. Sanar pressed closer to his side. We thought you'd appreciate us boxing everything up for you. It'll make your eventual move so much easier. I looked between them, my father, avoiding my gaze, and Sanar, triumphant behind her mask of concern. Mom would be heartbroken to see you like this, I said quietly. She trusted you to protect what we built together. His face flushed with anger. Don't you dare use your mother against me. She would have wanted me to be happy, to move on with my life. Not like this, I whispered. Not by erasing her. Either accept the changes, he said firmly, or perhaps Sanar is right, and it's time for you to find your own place. I stood there, suddenly seeing with perfect clarity what I had been refusing to acknowledge. The father I had known was gone, replaced by this stranger who couldn't, or wouldn't, see the manipulation happening right before his eyes. I'll get my things, I said finally. I packed a bag with essentials, carefully wrapping my mother's sculpture and a few photographs in my clothes. As I moved through the house, Sanaa watched from doorways, her presence a silent pressure urging me to hurry. When I reached the front door, my father approached, his expression conflicted. Elena, don't be dramatic. Take some time, cool off. You don't need to leave tonight. Yes, she does, Sanaa interjected, appearing at his elbow. This tension isn't healthy for anyone. A clean break is better. She turned to me, her voice softening artificially. Take whatever time you need to find a proper apartment. We're not monsters after all. The rain had stopped, but the evening air was cold against my face as I walked to my car. I placed my bag carefully on the passenger seat, then sat behind the wheel, staring at the house that had been my home for my entire life. Through the front window, I could see Sanaa speaking intently to my father, her hand on his arm, his head nodding in agreement to whatever she was saying. I drove to my friend Maya's apartment, explained the situation through tears, and accepted her immediate offer of her fold-out couch. After a sleepless night, I called in sick to work and sat on Maya's balcony, turning the blue envelope over and over in my hands. You'll know when the time is right, my mother had said. If not now, when? With trembling fingers, I broke the wax seal and removed several folded documents. As I read through them, my breath caught. Property deeds. Legal transfers. A letter from my mother's attorney. The house, my childhood home, had been transferred solely into my name 3 months before my mother's death. Elena, my mother's letter began, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and something has happened to make you feel you have nowhere to turn. I hope this never comes to pass, but I've seen the way grief can transform people, and I fear for your father's judgment in my absence. The enclosed documents transfer our family home into your name. Your father is aware of this arrangement, though he may have conveniently forgotten in his grief. I've arranged everything legally with Mr. Harmon, whose contact information is attached. This is not meant to punish your father, but to protect you and the legacy we built together. Use this knowledge wisely, with compassion but also with the strength I know you possess. Remember, kindness should never mean surrendering your dignity. Stand tall, my beautiful girl. All my love, always Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the familiar handwriting, before folding it carefully back into the envelope. Then I called Mr. Harmon's office and scheduled an immediate appointment. 2 days later, I returned to the house, documents in hand, Mr. Harmon following in his car as a legal witness. When I used my key to enter, I found Sanar in the living room, surrounded by color swatches and fabric samples. She looked up, surprise quickly giving way to annoyance. Elena, I thought we agreed you'd call before coming over. Your father's at work. I know, I said calmly. I wanted to speak with both of you, but this won't wait. Could you call him home, please? It's important. She frowned, clearly irritated by my composure. He's in meetings all afternoon. Whatever dramatic scene you're planning will have to wait until dinner, at least. I think he'll want to be here for this. Please call him. Something in my tone must have unnerved her, because after a moment's hesitation, she picked up her phone. A brief conversation later, she reported that he would be home in 20 minutes. This better be important, she said, eyeing me suspiciously. He's missing a critical client meeting for this. It is, I assured her, settling into my mother's favorite armchair, the one Sanaa had relegated to the corner of the room. While we wait, I'd like to introduce Mr. Harmon. He was my mother's attorney. The older man nodded politely from the doorway. Mrs. Mitchell, a pleasure to meet you, though I wish it were under different circumstances. Sanaa's perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. An attorney? Elena, what exactly are you doing? Waiting for my father, I said simply. Then all will be explained. The 20 minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Another family heirloom Sanaa had mentioned wanting to replace with something more modern. When my father finally arrived, his expression was a mixture of concern and irritation. Elena, what's so urgent that it couldn't wait? Sanaa said you brought a lawyer. I stood, motioning to Mr. Harmon, who stepped forward with a professional nod. Mr. Mitchell, we've met before, though it's been some time. I handled your late wife's estate matters. My father's face paled slightly. Yes, of course. But I don't understand why you're here now. I removed the documents from my bag, holding them but not yet offering them over. Dad, do you remember the arrangements Mom made before she died? About the house. He shook his head slowly, though something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or guilt. She was ill, Elena. We discussed many things, but I can't recall specifics. Then allow me to refresh your memory, I said, handing him the property deed. 6 months before she died, Mom transferred full ownership of this house solely into my name. She did it with your knowledge and consent, though you seem to have forgotten that detail. Sanaa moved swiftly to his side, peering at the document in his hands. What is this nonsense? The house belongs to your father. I've seen the mortgage statements. The mortgage was paid off 3 years ago, I explained calmly, with the insurance money after Mom's first cancer diagnosis. This house has been fully mine for over a year. Mr. Harmon has all the supporting documentation, including the transfer papers with both my parents' signatures. My father sank into the nearest chair, the papers trembling in his hand. Catherine did mention, but I thought, with everything that happened after, I assumed. You assumed it wouldn't matter, I finished for him. That I wouldn't enforce it. Sanaa snatched the papers from his limp hands, scanning them with increasingly frantic movements. This can't be legal. We're married now. What's his is mine. What was never his cannot be yours, Mr. Harmon interjected gently. The transfer was completed legally and filed properly with the county. The property belongs solely to Ms. Elena Mitchell. Sanaa turned to my father, her composure cracking. Did you know about this? Have you been lying to me? He seemed to shrink under her accusation. Catherine suggested it, to protect Elena's inheritance. I signed the papers, but with everything that happened after, I just forgot. Forgot? Sanaa's voice rose sharply. You forgot that you don't own the house we're living in? The house we're renovating? The house you promised would be our fresh start. I watched their exchange with a strange sense of detachment, as though observing characters in a play rather than the implosion of what remained of my family. I think, I said finally, drawing their attention back to me, that we need to discuss new arrangements. Sanaa laughed, a brittle sound. Arrangements? You can't possibly think you're going to kick us out. Your own father. Actually, I said, meeting her gaze steadily, that's exactly what I'm doing. At least for you, Sanaa. I turned to my father, feeling a deep sadness but also a resolute certainty. Dad, you're my father, and despite everything, I love you. You're welcome to stay, but only under the condition that you acknowledge this is my home now, and my decisions about it are final. He stared at me, shock evident in every line of his face. Elena, you can't be serious. Sanaa is my wife. And I'm your daughter, I replied quietly. The daughter you were willing to throw away for someone you've known less than a year. The daughter whose home and memories you were ready to erase. Sanaa stepped forward, her face contorted with rage. This is ridiculous. We'll fight this. Your mother clearly manipulated your father when he was vulnerable. Mr. Harmon cleared his throat. I can assure you, Mrs. Mitchell, that would be an expensive and ultimately futile legal battle. The documentation is ironclad, and your husband's signature on the transfer was properly witnessed and notarized. I set the rest of the papers on the coffee table. You have 1 week to remove your belongings, Sanaa. I think that's generous, considering you gave me less than an hour. And if I refuse? She challenged. Then Mr. Harmon will file an eviction notice, and I'll pursue legal action for the damage and displacement of my personal property. I gestured toward the stairs. Including my art studio, which I expect to be restored to its original condition. My father stood then, his face ashen. Elena, please. We can work something out. Sanaa and we're married now. Yes, you are, I agreed. And you're welcome to live with your wife, just not in my house. I turned to leave, nodding to Mr. Harmon to indicate we were finished. As we reached the door, Sanaa's voice rang out behind us. You ungrateful little, she caught herself, visibly struggling to regain her composure. After everything I've done to make this house a home, to help your father move on from his grief. This is how you repay kindness. I paused, turning back to face her one last time. Kindness? Is that what you call undermining someone's place in their own home? Erasing their mother's memory? Manipulating their father against them? I shook my head. No, Sanaa. You showed no kindness. You saw vulnerability and exploited it. You saw a chance to claim something that wasn't yours, and you took it. Elena, my father pleaded, don't do this. For a moment, looking at him, I saw flashes of the father I'd known, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had built shelves for my growing collection of books, who had danced with my mother in the kitchen on lazy Sunday mornings. But that man had allowed himself to be consumed by grief and manipulated by false comfort. 1 week, I repeated firmly. Mr. Harmon will be in touch to finalize the details. Outside, the sun had broken through the clouds, casting long afternoon shadows across the front lawn. I took a deep breath, feeling as though I was truly filling my lungs for the first time in months. What will you do now? Mr. Harmon asked as we walked to our cars. I looked back at the house, my house, with its familiar lines and the garden my mother had tended so carefully. Reclaim what's mine, I said simply. And then, rebuild. 6 days later, I watched from the kitchen window as Sanaa supervised movers loading her carefully curated furniture collection into a truck. My father stood beside her, looking lost and decades older than he had just months before. As the last box was loaded, he glanced toward the house, toward me, his expression unreadable from this distance. I didn't go outside to say goodbye. Some farewells are better left unspoken. That evening, I walked through the emptied rooms, noting the spaces where Sanaa's influence had briefly taken root. In the living room, I restored my mother's photographs to their places on the mantel. In the studio upstairs, I carefully unpacked my canvases and reassembled my easel by the window where the afternoon light created the perfect glow. As night fell, I sat in my mother's garden with a glass of her favorite wine, gazing up at the stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky. I know when the time was right, I whispered to her memory. Thank you for giving me the strength to stand tall. In the quiet of that moment, with crickets singing in the flower beds and a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the old oak tree, I could almost hear her answer. Kindness should never mean surrendering your dignity. I raised my glass in a silent toast. To dignity. To justice. To quiet revenge served not as a burning flame of destruction, but as the steady light of reclaiming what was rightfully mine all along. If you've ever had to stand up for what's rightfully yours, drop a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice served, and hit that notification bell to never miss an upload. Remember, sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply reclaiming your dignity.